waves rolling in. Sand is surfing, let the truth begin.
Diving deep where others fear to go. Promago fire, putting on a show. Sammy's dancing left and right, he spins. Aloha spirit, that's where it begins.
Hey, hey, Santa, ride that silver wave. Sammy grooving, nothing left to say. Banks are shaking, squeezes feeling tight. First lady shining in a silver dress bright.
Trumps returning, victory inside. Beach broadcast booming every day and night. Aloha joy,
Hold that dream so high.
Aloha, this is Santa Surfing. Welcome to Beach Broadcast. Happy St. Patty's Day. Today is recorded on Tuesday, March 17th, 2026. I want to thank you so much for joining us on Locals, and also want to thank you so much for joining us on X. We're going to be doing a little bit more on our X for subscribers, so I will be notifying everybody on that. Our daily shows can be found on YouTube and Rumble. Now, I have a little announcement to make, which with each of my podcasts, I have an article link in the comment section. I am going to have 1 to 3 podcasts on YouTube each day. Why? Is because I'm going to be recording just by topic. Why am I doing this? I have to change things so many times, guys. But why am I doing this is because when I do collective news, topic A, topic B, topic C, all in one podcast, there may be a topic in there that YouTube wants to remove. So instead of just removing that section, they remove the entire podcast. So if I go by topic, it's only going to be on that one topic. And then if they for some reason, because they removed 22 videos just in the last 4 weeks, they've removed 22 videos dating back to November of last year. So I'll be doing it on topic. So podcast 1 of 2 and then podcast 2 of 2 is available. So that's how it's going to work. And then the article is only one article. I hope that makes sense. But I'll show you as I go along. Podcast 1 is the EO on fraud, and Ilhan, a quote from Trump, Ilhan is the ringleader in the Minnesota fraud. And then the second podcast is on the American dream and what President Trump did today. Oh my gosh. But before I get started, our show is sponsored by Meta247now.com. And what they provide is ivermectin. They're 12 milligram, not 6 milligram, but 12 milligram pills. And you don't need a doctor's note and you don't need to fill out a form. And this company also provides fenbendazole as well. So Meta247 now, all you do is either go to their website, scan that QR code, call that number 888-749-0261. That's 888-749-0261. If you live outside of the United States, please go to their website. There's a contact page on the bottom of their website. Now, they have pills as low as $1.75 a pill. However, they do still have their 2 free blister packs, which is 20 additional ivermectin pills with any ivermectin order. Again, contact Meta247 now by going to their website or calling 888-749-0261. I'm telling you, President Trump, he's dropping bombs. He's dropping bombs everywhere, all different kinds of bombs. He is in Iran. He is ending their 47-year war, right? Here in America, he is ending the fraud, which is a war in itself because we are dealing with enemies here in our own country, which are politicians. I'm going to kind of walk you through all of this. He signed an executive order on eliminating the fraud. This is that announcement he made at the State of the Union speech, where he made an announcement saying that he will have a war on fraud and J.D. Vance will lead the task force. I'm going to play a clip in just a moment about some of the key takeaways on this executive order. It applies to all fraud around the country. He did mention that Ilhan married her brother, therefore she is illegal, and she is she is the ringleader. He also said that Ellison's a ringleader and Waltz is also a part of the fraud in Minnesota, but he did emphasize that Ilhan Omar is the ringleader of the fraud in Minnesota. The other key takeaway is Democrats set up the system for fraud. If we eliminated all the fraud, it would balance the budget. Stephen Miller said that in this clip I'm going to show you. Then he talked about the previous administration was very laxed on the anti-fraud, and they will be exposed. Okay, so I know we've been hearing about the exposures and we've been hearing about all of this, but now we've got an executive order to back it up now, and so that was actually by Andrew Ferguson who said that. Then we have it forces entire government apparatus to work together to eliminate the fraud all over the world. In other words, if agency A is giving, it has like something that's ready prepped for funding, they don't talk to the Treasury Department. The Treasury just funds it, and it's just kind of willy-nilly. So they're going to make sure that everybody is held accountable. All the agencies are held accountable. And then there's two solutions. J.D. Vance said that there's two solutions. One, we stop the payments to prosecute the criminals. And then Trump remarked that many politicians, he goes, they're all corrupt. Check this out.
Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. This is a big thing that we're doing. It's about fraud, having to do with all the fraud that's taking place in our country. And we have two people that are extremely brilliant and just very talented, and they're going to be put in charge. But I'd like to ask Will, if you would, to give a little description of what we're signing, the executive order, and then I'll ask J.D. to speak.
Yes, sir. As you stated in your State of the Union address, in light of widespread revelations of fraud in federally funded programs in states like Minnesota and California, this executive order in front of you will establish a new task force aimed at rooting out that fraud, returning potentially billions or tens of billions or even hundreds of billions of dollars to the American taxpayer. This task force will be chaired by the Vice President. The Vice Chairman will be the head of the FTC, Andrew Ferguson, who's with us here as well today. But this is going to launch a whole-of-government approach to rooting out the very serious problem of fraud in federally funded programs around the country.
Everyone knows they've been cheating for years. It's the first ever, and it's got to be stopped. I mean, it's got to be stopped. Think of it, Somalia is a third world, maybe a fourth world nation, one of the worst, one of the most dangerous. They don't have anything. They don't have councils. They don't have government. They don't have police. They shoot each other all over the place. They come here and they steal $19 billion. That's crazy. And Ilhan Omar, I hope this is part of it, but she married her brother, supposedly. I mean, there's a lot of documentation. That means she's here illegally and she's a congresswoman. And I hope you're going to be looking at that, or somebody is, all right? Because she's one of the ringleaders here. She's bad news, really bad news. She's so bad for our country.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, under President Trump's leadership, as we've seen, the illegal flow across the southern border was stopped completely. But what we found since President Trump came into office is that the Democrats have set up a system to funnel hundreds of billions and ultimately trillions of dollars to migrants that are in our country, oftentimes from places like Somalia. So as an example, ICE recently asked a group of illegal immigrants that were in detention whether or not they were receiving Medicaid. Half of them raised their hands and volunteered that they were on Medicaid. Just volunteered that. These aren't the ones who are hiding it, right? They also asked illegal aliens how they paid their medical bills, and they said that if they don't have Medicaid, they go to hospitals, they get free care there, and they bill it to the taxpayers. So they aren't paying for any of their own health care in this country. This is one example. And we've seen this over and over and over again. So under President Trump's leadership, and then of course with JD and the head of the FTC, Andrew Ferguson, we're going to see the first ever effort in American history to reclaim the ultimately trillions of dollars that were stolen from taxpayers. I believe, and I know President Trump believes, that when this theft is exposed, we will see that if all of it were stopped, it would be enough to balance the budget. The extraction of wealth from American taxpayers to people who don't belong here is the primary cause of the national debt, and this is the first ever effort to shut that down. Thank you, Mr.
Millions and millions of Americans pay into these programs every day, and they expect to get something out of it. And this fraud is just siphoning money that millions of Americans pay to fund their hospitals, to fund their daycare centers, into completely fake businesses. It isn't just unfair to all of us as taxpayers who pay for all this. It's particularly unfair to the Americans who need this the most and watch this money leave their hospital, leave their school system, and go out to fraud. And that is why this effort is so important. And I think we've just begun really looking at this, but I think that one of the things we're going to find is that in a lot of these agencies, the previous administration was pretty lax about existing anti-fraud controls, and we're going to expose that too.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. This is a very important whole-of-government approach to tackle the fraud problem. And let me just tell one story. One of the things that even before this executive order was signed that we were able to stop under the President's leadership is we saw evidence that in Minneapolis there were Somalis, primarily illegal immigrants, who were defrauding a Medicaid program that was meant to go to autistic children. So they were taking children who were supposed to get benefits, and they were claiming that their kids were actually autistic even though they weren't. And what did this mean? This meant two things. Number one, you had a lot of people getting rich off of the fraud while American citizens got poorer. And the second thing that it meant is that you had autistic kids in Minneapolis, in suburban Minneapolis, who weren't getting benefits they needed because Somali fraudsters were literally stealing out of their pocket. It's got to stop. And unfortunately, that kind of fraud is one example of probably hundreds just within the state of Minneapolis, and then it's repeated and replayed all over the United States of America. When we first started talking about this problem, the President made it very clear he wanted us to take the fraud problem seriously because nobody had until he was President. We started to figure out one big hole that existed is that the agencies of the government weren't actually talking to each other. So Treasury would have evidence of financial fraud, but wasn't talking to the Department of Justice about it. Health and Human Services had evidence of Medicaid fraud, but wasn't talking to the Department of Treasury about it. So what this executive order does is force the entire apparatus of the federal government to do two things. Stop the fraud on the American taxpayer and make sure that the benefits that ought by right go to American citizens go to American citizens and not to fraudsters. Andrew Ferguson will be the vice chair and is going to do a great job. If you're curious what's the difference between the vice chair and the vice chair is going to do all the work and I'm going to take all the credit. Andrew.
You said during your State of the Union that this type of fraud, the corruption, is the type of thing that can shred the fabric of a nation. Why do you suppose then that leaders in recent memory haven't looked at the systemic amount of fraud that's taking place?
Because they're crooked. They make money. They gain power. They use it for power. Like with the Somalians, they vote in a block, 100%. They make a deal with the Somalians. They all vote because they're on a gravy train. It's money first, power second. A lot of people say power first. No, it's money first, power second. Do you ever see where like Mercedes? People come over from Somalia, they have no money, and now they're buying Mercedes-Benz cars. Okay? It's more cash goes out of the Minnesota airport than any other place in the world or so. We're going to find it. And Minnesota's really bad. The governor's corrupt. The attorney general's totally corrupt. Just like the New York State attorney general, Letitia James. She's a highly corrupt person. Bragg, the DA, is a corrupt person. They're all corrupt. These are corrupt people. And we got too many of them in our country. And we have to expose them, and we have to catch them. And if these two guys can't, these are high IQ people. I've always liked high IQ. These are high IQ people. If they don't do it, we're going to go a long way, fellas, to find somebody else that's going to. We have no choice. If honestly, and they may not do a good job. If they don't do a good job,
thank you, sir.
It's possible. If they don't do a good job, the country's sort of in trouble. Yes, go ahead.
I think there are two obvious tools that we have to stop the fraud that's happening against the American people. One is that when we see evidence of fraud, we stop the payments. Pretty simple, right? We know that the American people are being defrauded. Let's try to stop the payments and ensure that whoever's making these payments is actually complying with some basic due diligence and making sure the payments are going to the right place. I think the second tool, of course, we have, as the President mentioned, is we have law enforcement options. We know that some of this fraud is just bad. Some of it's criminal. We know that people are intentionally trying to defraud the American people. It's not just in Minnesota. It's all across the country.
99% is criminal.
Yes, sir. So this is one of the reasons why DOJ is such an important part of this, is because we have to make sure that where we see criminal conduct, we actually prosecute it. And the president's talked about this a lot in the past. I don't need to repeat it, but it's worth noting that so many times when we find people engaged in really, really bad conduct, you know, the local judge or the local grand jury tries to stop it. One of the cool things about what we're doing is we're trying to take some innovative steps to ensure that when we find criminal fraud, we can actually prosecute it all the way to the end.
He covered everything, not just Minnesota, California. He covered the entire country. This is covering the entire nation. Is he also talking about Congress? Is he also talking about some of those other agencies? Well, I'll get to that in about 10 minutes. Now this EO, this executive order on fraud, is official and signed. The task force can make their moves. DOJ already exposed the government agencies. This EO is the icing on the cake. And the EO will find the fraud and the fraudsters and then begin the prosecutions. I imagine this is going to move very, 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 very quickly. And when it does move quickly, oh my gosh. Okay, so Ilhan, this is a clip from the Deputy Attorney General. She had mentioned that the Somalian representative Ilhan Omar, I'm toggling, faces serious citizenship problems. Remember, this was back in February when she talked on the Benny Johnson show, where she mentioned that she faces serious citizenship problems and could be denaturalized, guys. So if she gets her papers removed and she's getting sent back to the very country that they don't even want her, where is she going to go? Is she going to go to CCOT, Gitmo? I don't know. I blurred out her face because I know many of you don't want to see her nor hear her, so I'm not going to play this clip, but if you want to see it, you can click right here. But she faces investigation as her net worth is exploded to 3,500%. How did she beat this S&P? How did she beat the stock market? She is not that smart. She made from $1 million to $30 million in 1 year. Again, and that was back in December of 2025. So we already know a lot of the fraud investigations has already taken place. We just had to get this EO signed in order for the actual prosecution and exposing the criminals comes up. Now, I don't know when that's going to happen, guys, but we know that this is all in the works, and this is a great first step. Kind of coincidentally, the acting chief of staff to Tulsi Gabbard, Joe Kent, he is the director of counterintelligence. He resigns 1 day after the EO on fraud is signed. What a quinky dinky. Again, you decide. You have to decide on this one. But what he wrote and tweeted, after my reflection, I've decided to resign from my position as director of National Counterintelligence Center effective today. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation. It is clear that we stated this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. It has been an honor serving the president and Tulsi Gabbard, leading the professionals at NCT, National Counter-Terrorist Center. May God bless America. And then if you want to read his letter, here he goes. After my reflection, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let me toggle back up. So my question is this: will there be more of these types of resignations coming into play? Will this, because the fraud it stems, and remember, it's like an octopus, it's got lots of tentacles. So will this war on fraud, the executive order on fraud, get people to say, I'm out of here. I can't be exposed for this, because once they start doing the digging, I may, again, I'm not saying he is, but I'm just saying, will others get exposed? Joe Kent was citing the war on Iran. Remember, it is not Trump starting that war. It's the 47-year war that Iran had on its own people. He did not start it. He's ending it. And it takes military action to do that. If Joe Kent is saying that kind of Iran hasn't done anything to us, Iran has been threatening us. Iran is also involved with the strait and closing out the strait so that we can't get oil tankers to get through. Iran also was funded with their terrorist organizations and crimes against humanity and all of the human abuse crimes that was going on. Joe Kent didn't even mention any of that, right? Now, maybe that is not part of his job, but the humanity side is, look at what's going on with the people in Iran, right? The fraud extends to the entire nation. So past administrations, past and present politicians are all included in this executive order. So what President Trump is doing, he's restoring integrity for taxpayer-funded safety net programs, that have been exploited by illegal aliens, by criminals, by foreign gangs, by bureaucrats, and non-government organizations, the NGOs. This is the language in the executive order, and it is the president signed an executive order creating the task force to eliminate fraud, which will advise the president and coordinate government-wide efforts to combat widespread fraud, waste, and abuse in federal benefit programs. And then it goes down here about what I just read. He's stopping and restoring the integrity of taxpayer-funded safety net programs. So essentially, those sanctuary cities, this is his way of also defunding the sanctuary cities. When they go in, and we already know that they've already started investigations with many of the different types of fraud that's going on. And remember, they were also remember what President Trump said at the State of the Union about ending the congressional insider trading. I mean, the fraud of think of all the different types of fraud, the Medicaid fraud. What was heartbreaking is to hear about the children that had autism that are American citizens, and what J.D. Vance was saying earlier in that clip where he was saying that they were supposed to get the money, and instead the Somalian citizens got the money claiming their child had autism, and they got the money. They were given so much. And guys, while there's wars going on in other countries, we have our own war here. So this is President Trump's way of stopping all of this. And it's going to be really phenomenal once we start to see the benefits of all of this, because think about the billions, if not trillions of dollars that will be saved, and that could, again, balance the budget. So does the fraud extend to treason and sedition or sedition? Because the dirty governments, the dirty politicians, like Ilhan, aiding and giving comfort to other nations, to the people of other nations, paying illegals first over American citizens. The point is that what President Trump is getting down to the bottom of it? Because again, he may have to call it fraud. Remember, he's mentioned Al Capone many times. So is it a person going to get charged for a crime that may have a life sentence? But how many life sentences crimes have these people committed? It only takes one life sentence crime to just keep them locked up or wherever they need to go for their future home. So that's the end of this podcast, guys. Now, the second podcast, see how this article rolls into the second podcast. So it's going to be the second podcast, which would be on the American Dream. And this all ties in really wonderfully. Thanks so much for listening to this podcast, guys. Oh my gosh, this is a great first step. Now I'm going to talk about the American Dream on podcast number 2. You should find that link below in the comment section, or you can go ahead and go to the YouTube channel and grab that link as well. Thanks for listening to this show. Have yourselves a blessed day, and I will see you in a few minutes. Aloha.